The FujiCast is an independent loading zone production.
I'll tell you what, Kev, this lockdown proves to me is just how thick I am, to be honest.
What's the square root of 11.3?
Oh, five camels and a hedgehog.
No, my Zoom's not working. Skype, where's my frog? My frog account's not working.
I know, that's the thing.
Dad, come on.
Who
have a cup of tea. Have a cup of tea before I start.
Frog is the most. I'm sure Frog is brilliant in non-COVID times, but when everybody's trying to get onto it, it's and the thing keeps changing its password. Honestly, by the second day, IT department were just sending back one-word answers. No. Yes.
Well, Rosa's school uses Microsoft Teams, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. It's really good. But on the first morning, she tried to log on, and it just didn't make any sense. All of her stuff was wrong, and various things like that. And it turned out, after a little bit of investigative work by us and by the school, that because they don't want to identify the kids by their email addresses, so they've got these kind of random email addresses. Some like random number Mullins at such and such school.com, whatever it is. They'd allocated her. There's another girl called Mullins in year 11 or something. So she had hers, and the other girl had Rosa's. So Rosa was logging in, and it was like, advanced mathematics and physics. Rosa was like, what? I only do drawing.
Have you told them that you used to work for Microsoft, Kev?
Rosa probably has. I am Microsoft Teams support.
Are you? Are you the official Microsoft Teams support?
Yeah. Just press all the buttons and then go to work. That's what I do. Yeah.
Turn it off and turn it on again.
The FujiCast.
That's the way it'll work for you. Well, we will get through this. We have to get through this. How many months are we doing this for, Kev, this time? You're a man that knows stuff.
Isn't it end of March officially? Is like the latest. That's when the government are going to sit down again and discuss it. But there will be it's like a contract. There's break clauses in between.
Are there?
So yeah, I think middle of February is target number one. So it's half term essentially.
Half term. I can do this, Kev. Can you do this?
No.
We'll get there. Right, you and your questions today. Welcome back to the regular FujiCast, if you like. And of course, if you've been in the FujiCast private Facebook group, you may well have been leaving questions in there, and we'll be getting to those questions. Also, the ones that you've emailed in to click@fujicast.co.uk. If you are not a Fujifilm shooter, do not worry. It's a big community, and whatever flavour you shoot, you're very welcome. Thank you to those of our friends who've been supporting us on Patreon, which for the price of a coffee keeps the show growing and going. We were supposed to change that, weren't we?
We were. And today I have a list of people that we need to read out. Latest Patreon.
That are going. No, that are growing.
That are growing.
And what's your book of the week this week, Kev?
My book of the week this week is a very contentious Bruce Gilden book called Face.
Why is it contentious? Oh, yes, I know why it's contentious. Oh, yes, it is. And today's interview is with Steve Smith, who is a street photographer, very good printer, and he's going to talk about actually some of his work that he's been doing when he gets the opportunity to fly in Cuba. So Steve Smith on the show a little bit later on. Right, who's going first with the questions, Kev?
I'll go first because I've got one that's quite appropriate to the timing that we live in. Yeah. This is from Indy Layman. So this came into the Facebook group with the questions thread. With regards to photojournalists, given the events that unfolded in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday, how do the images get from the photographer to the news outlets for posting on websites, etc.? If the photographer is imaging for 6 hours in an environment that is rapidly evolving, they can't just stop and submit their photos. What is the latest high-tech solution for this?
Well, they're wiring, aren't they, for a start, from their cameras. I will say one thing that, without it sounding like an instant plug for my other podcast, Kev, but on Photography Daily on Saturday just gone, I talked with David Butow, who is a Washington, D.C. based photographer. He came across to Washington right at the start of Trump's presidency because he wanted to hang out, as he called it, for a while, not expecting it to last that long, because he wanted to be in town as the Trump thing was going on. And, of course, he's lasted the entire term. But he was talking about he was right in the thrust of it. If you look at his photos, I mean, I've got his links to Redux, and I'm not sure whether Redux is, I think that's maybe something sent to news desks. But anyway, to see his pictures, he is totally in the thick of it. And I did ask him, I said, what about, how did you get those pictures out? And he had left purposefully, because he knew it was going to be quite wild, his laptop and his phone in the office near to the Capitol building, and he had to go there to get the pictures out because he said it's just too rough and tumble. There was no way he could be doing that as it was all just going along. It was pretty tricky, I think, for a lot of them to get these pictures out as quickly as they did.
Yeah, and I do know, I mean, yeah, that aside, in terms of the rough and tumbleness of it, I do know that, a lot of them are tethering to their phone in terms of using cameras with Bluetooth and wireless and all that kind of stuff. And it is reasonably easy to do that. The challenge is if you've taken 10,000 pictures, which a lot of these guys do, and quite rightly, because you need to get as many opportunities of telling the story as possible, then a lot of them will use something like Photo Mechanic, download really quickly, sit in a side street or something, and fling them over to the news desk. But yeah, it's cold wiring. There's various ways of doing it, I would imagine. But yeah, if you're in the field, it's going to be using mobile technology, phones, tablets. I mean, a lot of these places now have 5G as well, remember? So if they've got the latest tech, they've got the speed of the dragon.
He had to make a bit of a decision, actually. This is an interesting decision that because he didn't. I don't think he expected for one moment that the protesters would get into the building itself. And there are pictures of him that he's been taking at the foot of the steps. When he saw it happening, he thought, "My God!" And he had to make this decision: do I go with it, knowing that there could be some, as there was in the end, some fire in there. And thank God that there weren't more deaths than there were. I'm surprised that it was at the lower number, because it could have been so much worse. But
I think it's been 5 now, hasn't it? 5 people died.
I think, and the latest, as we go to print, as it were, with this, a policeman lost his life as well. And so, I mean, they're decisions that you make on the fly, and never mind the photos being sent off. Can you imagine those decisions you're making? You're seeing history and thinking, he went with it.
I would imagine, I don't know because I've never been in that circumstance, but I would imagine that in a lot of these cases, they just send a lot of pictures and let the picture editor on the desk decide which ones they're going to use. Yeah. I can't imagine that the photographer themselves are sitting through thinking, I quite like the composition of that one.
No.
Yeah,
no.
I think the picture editor is doing his job.
And they're JPEGs. I know that they send these off as JPEGs. They're not being sent off as RAW files. They're JPEGs, so pinging out left, right, and centre. And later on, if there's a particular signature image they're going to use again and again, then they may rework a RAW file. But generally, they're JPEGs that are going out.
Well, I think for the press stuff, it's even the retouching has to be very minimal cropping and brightness, and that's it, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Interesting. Good question, Indy.
Thank you very much. This one is from Mark Dell. Hi, chaps. Love the podcast. Yada, yada, yada. The Fuji X100V is my favourite of the series. And I do use the 2 currently available lens adapters. Would the Fuji gods ever consider a light telephoto short version for the X100? Of course, it's almost against the true use of the camera design, but it would be a great asset to the already superb camera. Perhaps a 55 f4 or similarly short lens. Any other manufacturers thinking of listening? Perhaps make one. Thanks in advance from Mark. What do you think? Well, this was your camera of the year, 2021 camera of the year.
Yeah, well, actually, that gives us time to plug the Ask Andreas. We've got Ask Andreas coming back at the end of the month. The end of this month, and there is a thread on the Facebook group that you can ask questions directly to Andreas. Now, Andreas is the marketing manager of Fujifilm UK, and all-round general good guy. So he will be able to answer those kinds of questions. However, if you're not on the Facebook group, feel free to send them in via email as well. Questions like that, why they haven't made certain things, then Andreas might be the right person to answer. Personally, I agree with Mark. I like the wide angle converter for the X100 mostly. Ironically, the wide angle and the teleconverter have very different sizes, very different. You kind of just screw them on the front. But yeah, I mean, who knows? Who knows what's in the pipeline in terms of making stuff? I have a feeling, my spidey senses tell me, or rather I'm reading a lot on Fuji Rumours, that there's a whole load of new stuff going to be announced relatively soon.
What? What are you reading on Fuji Rumours that's about to be announced?
Stuff.
What stuff?
Stuff. Secret stuff.
Okay. All right.
Secret stuff. Things. Cameras, lenses, stuff.
Okay.
Mark IIs of things. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, honestly,
there's only one Mark II.
The days are long gone when I used to know things about this.
There's only one Mark II that we talk constantly about. Hang on, it's down here in my bag. Well, not the Mark II, obviously, the Mark I. Oh, that could be an XH1 Mark II or an XH2.
They can't call it XH1 Mark II,
No.
even if there is an XH1 Mark II.
No, I realise that. So I was saying it. An XH2 then. Is it an XH2, Kev? Am I being a bit of a devil here?
No idea. I honestly have no idea. Seriously, no idea. That's why we've got Andreas coming on.
All right.
You know what? I would love all of the camera manufacturers to have nice names. I mean, I like X100. I quite like the idea of that. X Pro, I get the idea of that. But then it gets all very complicated, doesn't it? And then the Sony ones, my God, it's like looking at kind of Chinese menu for food. R1, A1, 2 S's, and cars are the same. It's like, why can't they just call a camera like something like, call it, I don't know, Fred?
Oh, they tried to do that with what was it? The Vauxhall car, the Vauxhall Adam.
Fujifilm Suzanne.
I never quite got round that. Yeah, the Canon thing always confused me a bit with the model numbers that we have here and Rebel if it's in America.
Very confusing. Very confusing.
But,
and then Fujifilm really kind of confused me loads when they brought out the XF10, because the XF is the nomenclature for the lenses. And when they said XF10, I was like, oh, is that a 10mm lens? It turned out to be a camera. Confused me even more.
I know. All right. We shall consider. We shall consider. We shall consider. Right, yours from Facebook.
Okay, mine from the. You threw me a bit there because I was waiting for a little bit more. This is from.
What more did
John.
you want? Did you want me to push you a bit more on what's coming out?
No, John, because I don't know, honestly.
He does, everybody. He does know. You put thumb screws on him, he'll tell you everything.
John Almonte, the man from Almonte. Why do some people? Oh, here we go. Why do some people bash the XH1 because of the bigger grip, but then put a third-party grip on the XT cameras?
Absolutely, yes.
Well, that's a bit of a like out there question, because I don't think I've ever seen anybody say I hate the XH1 and at the same time holding an XT camera with a battery grip in their hand. So presumably John has come across those people. I certainly haven't. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, the XH1 is, for me, I think, was the camera I was least interested in because of the size of it. We will always disagree with this, you and I. Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a good selling camera. So the reason why I didn't like it was because the ergonomics of it were vastly different to the way that Fujifilm range had been going.
It just feels so good in the hand, though.
Yeah, it just wasn't for me, but that doesn't mean it's not for other people, of course.
I think if there is an XH2 coming out, that's the way I will go. I will, with my Fuji kit, it will be XH. I love the XT, by the way. I've used it for years, obviously, for weddings. But I really think that it will be XH. That's how it will become for me, in particular with my filming work. Because I love the ergonomics of this camera. It's always, love it. We'll never agree on that, obviously, but
no, and that's a good thing. John goes on to say the shutter release button on the XH1 is more comfortable on the XT line, in his opinion. He does caveat it with in his opinion. Whereas in my opinion, it's not. So there you go. You say tomatoes, I say tomatoes.
Tomatoes. But yeah. So is there an XH2 coming out? Moving on. Okay, here's
I would not know anyway.
Get the thumb screws out, everybody. Here's one from William Mound. Hi Neil, hi Kev. Firstly, a big thank you to both of you for the fab podcast. You're very welcome, William. I sent this question in a few weeks ago, but I don't think I heard the answer. I don't think I saw the question. This year has shown me that now is the time to do those someday maybe plans. I'm really close with my dad, and I've always thought about taking a photography class with him. I know he used to take classes as a youngster with his old man, and I'd love to continue that. I'm a hobbyist amateur and a Fuji film shooter, and he used to shoot film in his youth, but has since moved on to now shooting on his iPhone. Do you have any advice for people interested in taking evening classes in photography just for the love of it? I have no other motivation than to learn something new and to spend some time with my dad. I'm in my late 20s and a master's student, and he's in his early 60s. I'll be moving back to New York City next year, where he lives, and would love to take a class then. So that's from William Mound, currently living in Colombia, Bogota in Colombia. Yeah, I mean, I've done an evening class, Kev, and I absolutely loved it. And I found my files the other day up in the attic. I think we talked about these before. My old black and white, all my old test strips and all that kind of stuff, found it up in the attic. And I didn't come down. Sam shouted up in the loft hatch, "You okay? Have you fallen over?" Having found this stuff. I think it's what a lovely idea to go with your dad and do a night course in photography.
Oh yeah, no, it'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there must be loads of courses in New York when the world finally gets its arse back into life. Yeah, I think it's great. I've never been on an evening course, but I've run evening courses.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're kind of gentle, nice things to do. A couple of hours once a week. Yeah, all good.
I really loved the opportunity to get into the dark room and work in the dark room. The college I went to had a really, really good dark room. I think they had a couple. So that might be one thing to look out for. Make sure you choose a course which has the opportunity to get into a dark room. I think that's important because I think that's something you'll both enjoy a lot. Developing film and then processing film and then developing it and bringing it alive in those rooms. That's one. Maybe that's the thing I would suggest. Go for one that because I know they don't all have dark rooms. So I think that would be an important thing to make sure you do.
There will be some in New York, of course. So yeah, I mean, if you both fancy doing something very different, but something your dad might be a little bit familiar with from the older days, then film that would be really cathartic, wouldn't it? I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
I know Siren Soster.
Siren Soster. Is that a new place?
I know Siren Sister. Siren Sister. I haven't had a drink in 20 minutes.
You clearly need more.
No, I haven't had a drink since Monday as well. Cirencester College, yeah, where I do. They do.
That was another one, Kev.
Cirencester College, where I do my courses. They do film photography lessons as well. Yeah.
All right. Say Cirencester again.
Cirencester.
Say Nikon.
Nikon.
He's there. He's got it. Have we got time for another one from you before we go to Steve Smith?
Let me just throw a quick one in from TJ Ludek.
Okay.
He says, do you think film offers a quality and character unattainable with digital cameras? And do you think shooting film is more enjoyable than shooting digital or vice versa? And why?
Yeah.
I'll go.
I wish I had my quote. Can I go and rescue something?
I'll give you a quote.
What's that?
£2,000.
I'll pay it twice.
All right, for you.
All right.
For you, 2,200.
Do your answer for a moment.
Last offer 2,500.
I need to go into the cupboard and find something. Hold on, Kev. Keep talking.
Okay. Do you think film offers a quality and character unattainable with digital cameras? Probably is my answer to that. In fact, yeah, almost definitely. However, obviously it comes with its own challenge. Are you still there? Have you gone? Have you gone to make a cup of tea? He's left me flying the aircraft by myself. Yeah, so the quality.
I needed to find something.
Hang on, I'm just landing the plane.
Oh, so, Kev, I rescued this out because I'm a good boy. The paper that we have here that we do recycle. So I rescued this out the recycle. It was some questions from an interview that I did the other day with a producer of a television program about photographers that worked during the Troubles and in Northern Ireland. And one of the photographers said, big pictures are nothing about the quality, the focus, even the composition. It seems from this that big pictures are the ones that nobody else has. In terms of film, because this was all shot and filmed during the Troubles, nobody was worried about the... does this play into the question, or have I gone a sort of slightly different tangent on this one? Nobody was... they weren't really worried about, was it in focus? There was a particular... it's a hot... Do you remember there were ghastly images of the two corporals that got themselves caught up in the funeral cortege. Do you remember that story from the Troubles? Yeah. What they were doing there, nobody knows, but they were there. They were stopped. They were dragged out of their cars and murdered, weren't they? So it was a dreadful story. One of the corporals, I think, who was on the right-hand side of the car, discharged his army pistol, and everybody parted for a second. And during that moment, I think when he was clambering out of the car, one of the photographers, who was on the other side of the street, took a pic. He was the only one on the other side of the street. took a picture looking back in and got that photograph. And that photograph is probably one of the most important from the Troubles of that particular time, along with the Bloody Sunday stuff as well. And that was the response that was given by a photographer. It says it doesn't matter that the picture was slightly out of focus. I've never seen a picture that's in focus at that moment. The biggest one is the one that nobody else has.
Yeah, that's more about the impact of the image rather than the actual character of the picture itself. But yeah, it all comes down to times are different, technology is different, and I do think that you do get stuff in film. I've got a load of old film pictures here that my mum's been giving me, and I've actually been buying a whole load of stuff off eBay and various places. In fact, I did a random grab of a load of stuff on eBay, and it turned out to be 35mm slides from one of the royal photographers.
Oh my word!
Loads of kind of press photos of the royal family in the 80s.
Do you know the photographer?
Yeah, so the photographer was somebody called John Shelley.
Right, John Shelley. Okay. John
Shelley. Yeah, and he was one of the press photographers for the royal family in the 80s. And I've got 300 35mm slides of this, and it was a random selection.
Yeah.
Because I've got a project ongoing that I'm trying to kick off with kind of pictures of people we don't know. And so I'm looking through these slightly turned up in the post, and I was like, blimey, these look like people I know. And sure enough, they were. Yeah. And John Shelley. And so I did a little bit of research on John Shelley. And I did a little bit of research. I popped his name into Google. And it does kind of come up as there's a illustrator and then an official press photographer. So yeah. He's quite well known, or was quite well known. I'd never heard of him though, but yeah, got a load of his original 35mm slides.
Your project sounds fascinating. What can you tell us more about it, or not at the moment? Is it secret? Is it secret squirrel at the moment?
Yeah, I've probably got, much to Gemma's annoyance, about 5 to 10,000 35mm slides.
I never knew this. This is a complete surprise. There's stuff I don't know about you, Kev.
Yeah. I've just found this article, by the way, about John Shelley. It's from January the 10th, 2014, and it was his obituary.
Yeah.
News reaches me of the passing of press photographer John Shelley, aged 81. John was one of the first modern UK royal family press pack photographers, having received a phone call from Buckingham Palace in the summer of 1978, asking if he would like to accompany Prince Charles on one of his first official overseas tours. John accepted, and the royal press pack story started. So there you go. So I've got a whole load of his stuff. He was born in 1932. He died just before Christmas 2013. So I've got, and that aside, I've got all kinds of other things. Some of these pictures in these 35mm slides would definitely not be something you would show publicly. Right. The things people took pictures of each other doing. Really? But yeah, so I'm always picking them up. Oh, in the days when we were allowed to go out and see people and touch things, I would always go to the flea markets, and if there was anybody selling a box of 35mm slides, pick them up. Now I've got my banging
headache. Is it?
No, I've got my banging Epsom scanner.
Yeah.
My plan is to, when I get through all of my other projects that I've got, which is about 65, this is on the list. Yeah, so...
God hope we never have to go back to work again, Kev. I must say, on the slides front, we found some in a cupboard, must be going back 6 months during the first lockdown, during the war, and a load of slides that I'd taken years and years ago of a trip to Egypt. Inside, you can't go in them now. I took pictures inside the pyramids, and it was fascinating to find those. Don't think I was supposed to use flash, but I did.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I love all that old stuff.
Yeah.
Love it. Yeah, so that's one of my projects. If anybody does that project now, I shall be very angry.
No, well, they've got to collect 10,000 slides to start with, so I think you're pretty safe there.
And don't forget to filter out some of the more ones.
What have I found? Oh, here's something on eBay from somebody called Gemma selling 10,000 slides.
10,000 slides, 13 camera bags, 45 cameras, That's 2 dogs and a child.
Creating some space. Oh, what's this bit? And my husband comes with it. Right, okay. Right, let's go for our interview. This week it's going to be Steve Smith. Now, I will say this about Steve. He is a proper quiet giant of social and street documentary. Former winner of the prestigious Association of Photographers Open Awards and the Royal Photographic Society's Print International Award. He's had his work featured in the Sunday Times and Independent on Sunday and exhibited his work as far away as Cuba. But I was told he doesn't shout about himself, and he's a calm, thoughtful, methodical photographer who, just like his photography is, he's really just as happy disappearing into a crowd to make his photographs of life. Now, we've been meaning to talk to a photographer about awards for a while, and in Steve's case, fellowships, and the meaning of it, and how to shoot for one, and so on. And since Steve is on the fellowship board of the RPS, he's probably not a bad person to ask. I must just point out, since he talks about being in Oxford Street in London, that this was recorded prior to the strengthening of lockdown and, of course, the current complete lockdown in terms of how that would clearly affect shooting street for pleasure. This is Steve Smith, FRPS. Steve, you learned the craft in a similar way to me, actually. You went to night school, and you managed to find a particularly interesting tutor who had an intriguing background. What were you doing prior to photography, though, before we get to the night school?
Yeah, I worked in a drawing office. My father, he worked in John Brown shipyards in Glasgow, so he was always into environmental engineering, I suppose, and I got an opportunity to go into a drawing office. So I've always been design-based.
But as far as the photography goes, you had a sort of creative bent by the sound of it, being in a drawing office.
Oh, yes. I mean, I always loved creating things. As a kid, I remember one Christmas, I think it was 1964, I was 11 at the time. For Christmas, I got a Black & Decker drill, electric drill. Now, these days, everybody's got a Makita or a DeWalt.
Yeah.
In those days, for a kid still at primary school, I suppose it was quite unusual. But no, I always liked creating things. I was always drawing, and it kind of comes from my father.
But the night school is where it starts photographically.
Yeah.
But then the person that was tutoring you had a lifetime of military experience, didn't he?
Well, he was seconded to the RAF during the Second World War, and he was one of the darkroom workers, if you like, at RAF Medmenham, where they processed the film from reconnaissance aircraft after bombing raids. Yeah. And he would develop the film, produce the prints. And I remember him telling me, because he actually produced some of the prints after the Dam Busters raid. He was still, all those years later, still visibly upset with the devastation.
Mm.
You know, I think 2,000 people died because of the flooding.
Mm.
And I also got another friend, actually. He worked for a big multinational company who had a factory in the valley below still. And he said they've still got the markings on the wall where the flooding occurred.
Wow.
So it's quite devastating. But he was a true professional, and he ran this night school in High Wycombe. So I thought, this sounds interesting. I went along.
So it really was off the back of, this looks interesting. I could fill my evenings with this a little bit. You had no idea what was going to come from it at that stage, did you?
No, I had no idea. But I just, when when you're younger, you've got the enthusiasm. You just want to learn new things. So, I didn't know where it would lead, but I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the alchemy of the darkroom.
Well, that's exactly why I was. That was the thing that hit me when I did my night school thing. When we got past the third or fourth week, I remember my tutor saying, "Right, next week we're going to be in the dark room," and I thought, "Oh, this sounds good." Do you remember that first experience of a print appearing?
Oh yeah, it's like magic, isn't it? It's pure magic. Within a minute, the image starts to come through, and within 2 minutes, it's finished. And then it goes into the stop bath and into the fixer.
Would you describe yourself as a competent printer, a good printer, or an excellent printer?
A competent printer, but there's room for improvement. I mean, I've just built a new darkroom in lockdown, so that's now fully fitted, and I've got one or two modern aids, shall we say, that will improve the print quality, like split contrast, and so you still buy new bits of kit that help the process, especially when it comes to sampling the negative, the high contrast areas and low contrast.
Because we're going to come to the actual projects that you've been working on, but I know you've come back to you went to digital, but you've come back to print latterly, haven't you? Why is that?
I like that the whole process where you take out a roll of film, you put it in the camera, you've taken the shot, you don't know whether you fully got it or whether it's sharp, whether it's in focus. And when you take that film out of the camera and you stick it in the fridge for a week or a month or 6 months, and you get it out and you start to process it again, and you get the joy of actually saying, "God, I forgot about that," or "That's better than what I thought." And this is the whole process. It's more rewarding, and it's grounded, and it just slows you down. Yeah. I think that's the most important thing. You're very considered about what you're taking pictures of.
I know you live in the Chilterns, which I know reasonably well because I spent a few happy years, actually, Steve, in the Chilterns working for local radio stations in the area. But you prefer the urban environments. So what drew you out of your lovely countryside around you there and into the urban atmosphere?
Well, I was born in London. I was born in Chelsea. In the 60s, we moved around and we ended up in High Wycombe. And now I live in the lovely Chilterns, and it's wonderful if you want to go for a walk.
It is.
But when I take pictures, there's not a lot going on, and I think you're too familiar with your surroundings. You go to Oxford Circus, and you can lose yourself, and you can blend into the background. And there's always something going on. I mean, I actually like to find people that are interesting, unusual, or something unusual is happening. And I suppose because you've got so many more people, you've got a better chance of something unusual happening.
I know street photographers work in many different ways. Some work, for example, like Bruce Gilden. They're quick. They're in people's faces, and some are far more considered and patient.
Yeah, I'm not a Bruce Gilden, and I'm not a Dougie Wallace. Dougie Wallace, I'm a great admirer of his work. He's done some fantastic stuff. But I'd just rather just try and be a bit more patient and wait for the moment.
What's your advice to people that are hunting for street portraiture, for example? So if you look across your site, there's beautiful street portraiture on there. Do you have a sort of method to get into people's hearts? I'm not really into a lot of street portraiture. For a start, if you ask any street photographer, should you make contact with anyone, they say no. You should take the picture first, and if you talk to them afterwards, then fine. But you don't want to ruin the moment. The street portraiture is a different genre almost. But when you do it, yes, you obviously got to ask them. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Yeah. But some people say no, and some people you can tell by the way they're dressed. They're extroverts, and can't take your picture. Yes, please. What are you after? When Steve Smith goes walking the streets in London and Oxford Circus, what are you looking for? I mean, you said flamboyant characters is one, but it can't just be that.
I suppose we get into this the actual layering of pictures of a picture, where something's happening in the foreground, but also something's happening in the background as well, and that's called sort of multi-layered pictures, and that's really what you're after, but that is quite difficult. They're always looking for unusual situations, with people they might be carrying a product, a box or something, or hopping over the road or a puddle, but just something a bit unusual. I mean, we all love people watching. It's the greatest hobby in the world.
How do you know when you finished in a day? We think, Steve, that's it. I've got as much as I'm going to get.
When your body starts to creak and hurt, and honestly, and I suppose I walked 8 miles yesterday.
Wow!
And so when your back starts to ache, and you sit down for half an hour, and you recover for another half an hour, but then you thought, let's call it a day and go home. But my enthusiasm never wanes, really. It's the body that lets you down. You don't have this trouble when you're a bit younger.
Fellowships. I want to talk about awards and fellowships. We've discussed the merits of them of late on the show a bit, and there's two definite divides. Those that say, "Oh, you don't need that," and some people who really work towards it. It's either a pinnacle or something that's incredibly precious to them. How do you sit on that? Because the fellowship boards, which we're going to talk about, those from Cuba, for example, have been important to you, haven't they? Establishing your name.
And I think it's important that I don't think you can let it drive your work. I think if a fellowship comes out of the work, your body of work, your series of work, that's the best way. I think if you chase the fellowship, you'll just be, for want of a better phrase, ticking boxes. And it's not something that everyone can achieve. You have to reach a certain level. I mean, I see a lot of people's work. I thought, if they're interested, that make a great fellowship.
Let's talk about your work in Cuba, because that drew some strong recognition. Did you? You went on originally. You went to Cuba on holiday, didn't you? It wasn't really for a photographic experience. It was, but I did hear an interview where you suggested that you felt you were in the wrong part of the country at one stage.
Yeah, we went there for holidays. So we did this 2-week split: a week in Havana and a week in Veradero. Now, Veradero is a beach resort. It's got a peninsula 32 kilometers long, full of hotels for tourists. And not even the locals were allowed to go into this area. They could only get in there if they were working in the hotels. So I spent a week in Havana, and it was wonderful. I mean, not only taking a sort of step back in time, you got the old cars and you got the cigars, but it's just the infrastructure, the buildings. You see these wonderful Spanish colonial buildings that are still there, even with the original doors, 100-year-old doors, and it was unspoiled and very photogenic. So after a week, we head to Veradero, and I've got into this hotel, and all the drink and all the food you could eat. I thought, I just want to be back in Havana.
And what did your wife say when you said, "I want to be back in Havana"?
She was sympathetic, but it's far better to travel around and look at the local environments, the local people, than be locked away in some sanitized hotel.
You went back to Cuba then a good few times after that with photographic purpose at that stage. You started building this portfolio of work, really, that then became the fellowship panel.
Yeah, so that was the first time I went was 2006, and we went back in 2008. And on the flight back from the first time there, I was thinking about all the images I could have had or should have had. I suppose you look upon the first trip as a recce. The second time, I knew what I wanted to actually do. So I just walked the streets, just looking for pictures and looking for people, and I built on it from there.
Now you're working with people who speak a different language. How's it different when you're working in Oxford Street, Oxford Circus? You know the place well. You've grown up around the city, but now you're in an entirely alien environment.
Yeah, well, I think sometimes that's an advantage. For a start, you've got a different attitude to life. South American people. You pick up a camera and they're up for a picture straight away, most of them. You do that on Oxford Street, people will be putting their hands up or turning their heads away. Yeah. We are quite grumpy in this country. But Havana, they like the tourists. They like the fact that you want to take a picture of them. Okay, some of them want money. I did that the first time I went there, but I've never done it since. And they haven't got as much as we have in the West. But they enjoy life. Yeah, they enjoy life. They make the most of it.
So really, this is for those that are planning doing panels. So you've returned to Havana. You're back in Cuba. You've got this idea for your fellowship panel. What are you looking for? What's the project? What's going on in your mind?
Well, I wanted to catch the people and environments of Cuba, all aspects. From someone who may have lost a limb, or kids playing in the street, or women chatting on the doorstep, or people travelling. So I just really want to sort of mix it all up, like a snapshot of time in Havana.
And when you're putting together a fellowship, I mean, you even have to start thinking about whether something's landscape orientated or portrait, don't you?
Yeah, I didn't worry too much about that at the time. I think when you see pictures and take pictures, it's quite natural whether it should be in portrait format or landscape format. I didn't worry too much about that at the time.
What makes a good fellowship panel?
I think you got to have good cohesion. You got to make sure that all the pictures look like they came from the same person. So you have to be careful in post-production, and it's quite difficult, but I wouldn't say a style, but you have to make sure that each picture is I liken it to a book. When you read a book, every paragraph is different, and if you're looking at a series of work or a fellowship, you don't want to read that paragraph twice.
No.
So you want to tell a different story with each picture. I think that's important.
Has the mood changed towards street photographers? I did hear, again, I heard in an interview you did a story of a run-in that you had at Scarborough Beach, for example. And I talk often with news photographers that say, these days where you wouldn't wear the word press on the back of your jacket anymore. And I think the attitude towards photographers has changed quite a lot over the last couple of years even.
Well, there has been an explosion in photography in general, whether it's with an iPhone or a DSLR. And street photography in particular. You go back 20 years ago, you mentioned street photography, nobody knew what you're talking about.
No.
It's social documentary taken in the streets. Yeah, there are some sort of conflicting opinions about photographers, and some of them don't do themselves any favours. They're quite pushy. So I think we've got to be a bit careful and respect. Think about situations you're in. But with the Scarborough incident, I just found that bizarre.
Talk me through that.
Well, we were travelling up to the Lake District. We went up the East Coast, and we drove into Scarborough one day. And I had the Canon 1DS Mark III, and I'm a great admirer of Martin Parr's early work.
Yeah.
So I was wandering around the promenade and around the beach and taking pictures. And thought nothing of it. And I went back after about an hour, met my wife, and decided, I said, let's move on. And we got stopped by 3 police cars on the way out of Scarborough. They looked at my images and didn't have a problem at all, and let us on our way. But it's quite upsetting. If you think street photographers are hard-nosed and don't care, believe you me, it's very upsetting to think that someone thinks you've been taking inappropriate pictures. So I'm very careful that I don't put myself in that position again where you can even be questioned.
Has it changed? Well, obviously it has then. It's changed the way you make pictures, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think it's sad. I mean, if you look historically at Cartier-Bresson and great pictures of the past, where many of his images included children. Now in this country, you cannot do that so easily. You might get an upset parent, someone may lose their temper. You don't know what's going to happen. It's not predictable. So you just don't do it. I just advise anybody, don't get involved with children in the picture unless you've got parents' consent. So
you were working at Oxford Circus over the last few days. Does that mean there's a new project in the off here?
Well, I think it's important to have projects and add to them. I mean, with Oxford Street, I've been shooting there probably the last 10 years, I suppose. Yeah. And so you got a body of work, and you've just got to keep adding to it. And there will be a cut-off period sometime, but I haven't quite reached that yet. I know I used to quite often see Matt Stewart down Oxford Street taking photographs, but I haven't seen him of late. So I suppose everybody has reach a point where they say enough's enough. I haven't reached that yet. I mean, in the fridge, I've probably got 120 rolls of film to be developed.
Oh, my word.
And a lot of those are from Oxford Street in the West End.
Is there a reason you keep those for quite some time before you look at them?
Well, we moved house sort of 10 years ago. Then the house we live in now, we went through a big building project. So I lost the darkroom. I lost the facility to develop films and print them. So I just keep them in the freezer. So it's almost that time now where I'll get them out of the freezer and develop them.
Well, thanks to Steve Smith for joining us on the show this week. And of course, if you'd like to see his work, we'll link to it on the website FujiCast.co.uk. Just a quick mention for the week ahead on Photography Daily. After you've listened here, of course, we have 3 open editions this week. Today I talked to Vanessa Simpson about her legacy projects, making pictures of loved ones, recording the sound and making very personal documentaries. A project that was about to properly launch when COVID hit in March last year, but it's designed to be really a story of inspiration for those who are starting afresh in this business at this time. And then Wednesday, the Danish music celeb portrait photographer Søren Sulkier talks about an incredible long-tail international project photographing street artists, many of whom would rather not have their faces shown at all. Some ingenious ways to get around it. And talking of tales, tenuous perhaps, but he also talks about a project photographing starling murmurations that has gone crazy for him, in a good way. You never know when that project is about to capture people's attention in a way that you'd never thought it could. So that's coming up during the week. Also, actually, with the scenes at the Capitol last week, there's an opportunity, a chance that we may be joined in a special by a photographer whose pictures went viral after one particular attack caught on camera. That's on Photography Daily this week, which is available on all main podcast apps. Right, back to your questions. Here's one from John Baisley. Greetings from Cuba Pedy. We've spoken about Cuba Pedy. It's where, did you see that project that John Baisley has done, where old cars go to die or something?
He's got a book out now, or a magazine.
I know, it's amazing. Anyway, that's Cuba Pedy. With so many upgrades over the years with camera bodies and lenses from Fujifilm, what justification, if any, do you tell yourself when upgrading a camera body or lens when it's released from Fujifilm? Take the X100 series as an example. They kept the same lens from the X100 through to the X100F, yet they had sensor changes, some autofocus upgrades. What is the yes, I have to have that moment? I like that. What is the yes, I have to have that moment? Well, what's it for you then, Kev? Well, X100 is just yes, I have to have it.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that with that, but for me, I mean, I don't know if I ever have. It has to be something that I know is going to make things better for me. That's what I typically go. I don't just buy it because I can. So it has to be something that I need. I think I want. It's why I don't have XT4 at the moment. And a lot of the lenses I never had. I never got. I still use 23mm, the original 23 1.4, 56 1.2. Yeah. Still use those a lot. I did get a set of the F2 primes, but some of those I sold. So yeah, I mean, to me, it has to make economic sense.
Do you think lockdown and this period is really, I suppose, certified in your mind that you think in that way, that now it has to be what I need rather than what I want? Because I must admit, I was I have always been in my 16 years of working professionally as a photographer, a bit of a leap at it merchant. I've got to have that. I must try that. Oh, that looks a great toy. But now, needs must and all the rest of it. I've had to look very carefully at what makes my pictures better, what makes my filming better, what do I feel comfortable with when the camera is in my hand, what am I confident that I can get out of the camera that is in my hand. And I think definitely this period has changed that in me.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever kind of had that. That's a classic gas symptom. Isn't it?
Totally. Yeah.
And I suppose it's not true that I've never had that, but I definitely feel like I'm more pragmatic with my purchases. In terms of cameras, other shit I buy all sorts of though.
Like 10,000 slides.
Like 10,000 slides. But
printers
and projectors and bags.
Well, there we go. I mean, that's as expensive. The amount of printers I've had that I've had used and sold again. Because I just have a relationship with printers where banding seems to be the name of the game. I mean, and camera bags. Actually, that trip up to the attic over the last week, I can't believe how many camera bags are up there. I didn't dare look inside them. There'll be spiders sort of set up home and have small families and communities in there, I would have thought. But camera bags. I mean, some of this
I got rid of loads of camera bags.
Did you? No, Kev, really?
Yeah, I got rid of loads of them. I had loads. I got rid of them. I didn't throw them out. I went to the pub and gave them to people.
What, just randomly?
Well, yeah.
Hi, I'm Kev. Do you want a camera bag? He's a funny bloke.
Well, no, people I recognised and knew.
Oh, did you? I thought you just meant you walked in. Like the person that comes in with the flowers, Yeah. But thanks very much.
Inside each bag was 10,000 cigarettes, mind.
Was it? What? What's going on? Kev, it's the black market in Malmesbury. Do you want a camera bag? Really means, do you want 10,000 cigarettes?
Oh, dear. So gas, we all have gas to a certain extent, don't we? But I think now you're right. Now we need to be more sensible than ever.
I've certainly changed in that respect. Now a camera will be for me what it does best for me. And I'll split that into two. What ones film best for me, what ones photograph best for me, what lenses I actually use, as opposed to the ones that have sat in the camera bag and really have not been used for so long. Including your 35mm, which I'll one day give back to you.
Yes.
Right, your turn.
Okay, so back to the Facebook group, and the question is from John St. John, and he says, autofocus question.
Isn't it John St. John?
John St. John. I said it because I knew it would get us in trouble.
Got me in trouble before. Go on.
I like it when we get in trouble. John St. John.
Yeah. You'll be in trouble.
Autofocus question.
Yes.
What makes a lens slow to pick up and acquire its subject, but others snap and lock? I read the 56 1.2 could miss its target and stay focused on background, yet the 50 f2 hits it. I understand that a lot of glass is moving around in big aperture lenses, but they also let in a lot more light. So it can't be weight because that's a motor issue, and it can't be amount of light from image. There you go. What do you think about that, Neale?
I always thought the 56 actually was pretty brisk. I know the APD version is supposedly slower and in real terms almost to stop less of light wide open, but isn't it about relationship between body and lens that affects this? I mean, if the lens isn't letting enough light in, then the camera starts to huff and puff. So less light, smaller glass, less speed, isn't it? I mean, there's a trade-off, but that doesn't really explain the 50mm being a bit brisker in this respect, does it?
I'm going to say something quite controversial.
Oh, are you? Warning. Stand by.
I read constantly the 56 1.2 is slow to focus and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
In my head, when I read that, I'm shouting out, "You're not using it properly." There you go.
Right.
There's my controversy for today. If you think the 56 1.2 is slow, then you're not using it properly.
Is that because back button focusing and all that sort of thing?
Not necessarily that, but understand where the focus acquisition plane is on the camera that you're using. Yes, back button focusing will work. Understand the continuous focus options in the camera. Just use it properly. Of course, it's not going to be as pin sharp and fast as lenses that were made 10 years later, because ultimately, the f2 lenses, 8 years, are going to be using newer technology, newer motors, less glass to move around, as John kind of alludes to. But yeah, the 56 1.2 could miss its target, he says. But yes, it could miss its target if you don't use it properly. I literally have honestly no problems with that lens whatsoever, and don't think I ever have. And I still have the very first one that I bought.
And the 56 was first gen, wasn't it?
Yeah, 56 1.2, first generation.
Yeah.
So no problems with that. But it is true that some lenses are slower than others. Of course it is. But mostly that is, as far as my understanding, it is down to things like the glass that's in there, the amount of elements specifically. Some lenses have more elements than others. And also the technology that's in there. Some of them have kind of linear motors, and some of them don't, and so typically lenses that are older will be slower. But there is the 56 1.2 is not does not miss focus. The photographer misses focus.
You heard that from Kev.
There we go.
All complaints sent in this week via our wives, as always.
Yes.
Right, book. What do we have? Oh, more controversy.
Yeah, a controversial book, I think, is the way to call it.
Yep.
By a controversial photographer, Bruce Gilden.
Yes.
Our mate Bruce. And this book is called Face, which it's actually a Dewey Lewis publishing book. And I love that name, Dewey Lewis. Very Welsh sounding.
And the News. Oh, no, that was Huey Lewis.
Dewey Lewis and the News.
Huey Lewis. I think he does a show on Six Music now, doesn't he? I'm sure he does. With a very
Dewey Lewis and the Books.
That's
what there should be a podcast called Dewey Lewis and his books.
Dewey Lewis and his books. Absolutely. I think it would go completely over the head of some people, that one.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to... So this is a book that's large. It's kind of bigger than A4, a vertical kind of book, but not huge in terms of pages. I don't know how many. I would hazard a guess at maybe 150, something like that. Now, I'm going to just quickly read a little bit of the blurb of the context. And it says, here are Bruce Gilden's people. He shares their teeth, their stubble, their scrapes and their blemishes, their fear of death. In the women's scowls, in the sternly ambiguous glances, he sees his own mother's face before she killed herself. Wow. We live in the world whose visual lingua franca has rapidly become the decontextualized, always posed, mechanically lit idiom of social media, of Instagram, and yes, of Facebook. So that's the first part of the introduction. Now, the reason why I read that bit out was because a lot of people look at this body of work. I saw this body of work at Photokina in Germany, 4 years ago, maybe even longer than that. And it was in the Leica had a massive hall at Photokina, huge, and they had the this body of work was printed in this theater. You go into this theater, it was huge and dark, and all they had were these images, and they were, I don't know, maybe 10 feet tall, and they're all staring at you with beautiful light, and they are graphic pictures.
They are very
close-up pictures of these people. And the whole, and he got in, a lot of people were saying, well, what gives you the right to kind of, get that close to people, take these pictures, and they are portraits. They're not his traditional run around the street, take a picture and then run off kind of thing. So these people know they're having their pictures taken, but for all intents and purposes, it would look like he's gravitated to people who are, let's say, not traditionally beautiful looking. But I also went to see him talk about this book at the photography show, and somebody asked him this question. Why are you making people look ugly? He went off his absolute rocker. Absolute rocker. I thought he was going to walk off the stage.
Really?
But his argument was spot on. He was like, what makes you think that these people are ugly? Yeah. And then he went on to talk about his mum and, what happened there, and the reason why he was interested in this body of work and people that are on the, perhaps on the edges of society. So I think it's a really, really important book. And I just, as we're recording this now, I just popped it in to see if it was available on Amazon. It is available on Amazon. It's £325. So
you'll get in trouble, Mullins. You'll be in trouble.
A little bit cheaper on Aid Books, perhaps, or keep an eye out for it on the Oxfam website and various places like that if you're interested in it. These are really high detailed portraits of people. So I'm just flipping now. I've got a picture here. George from Miami, Florida. Right. And they're all color. They're all obviously taken on his Leica. They're very close, very high contrast. If any editing has been done to them, it's been done very, very subtly and very, very well.
He usually illuminates with flash, or bang with a flash, handheld flash.
He often uses two flashes. Yeah, he often uses two ring flashes.
Two. Huh?
But you're seeing the absolute pores of their skin. Brittany May, St. Paul, Minnesota, USA. It's hard to describe the pictures without seeing them. We've got teeth here that are mostly missing, and the rest that are yellow. It's this just brutally honest, I think.
You see, that it was an interesting question that person asked then at the photography.
The photography show.
The photography show. because he hasn't gone on a beauty pageant hunt here.
No,
and it's a very difficult question to pose to him. But it's a fair question, I think, because when you look at the pictures here, he hasn't gone for average-looking bloke or girl. He has gone for people who stand out in one way or t'other. Mm-hmm. And that's a fair description of how he's gone hunting for these portraits. And I use hunting advisedly.
I think there's two angles to that, isn't there? There's one that says, why should we always be looking at pictures of beautiful people? And why can't we see the everyday ordinary, or the people that are, struggling with the way that they look?
Well, we haven't gone halfway on this.
Well, his argument, and I think it's valid, is that these people don't think that they're ugly.
No, and I'm not saying ugly. I'm just saying they are a very different look. God, I could get myself in a lot of trouble here.
This is how the conversation went with the photography.
God, I could imagine it did. Yeah,
there was like a circle of space going around this fella that asked the question.
But I bet you a lot of people
was like backing away.
But I bet you a lot of people in that auditorium were thinking, "That's a question I'd like to have asked, but I would never have dared."
Yeah, I mean, it was a valid question for sure, but his point is that it is really about. I suppose kind of contextualizing why, this social media world that we live in, and, the beauty and why none of these people in this picture are making themselves look like ducks and pouting, and none of them have injected their skin with Botox so they look like, frying pans. They are what they are. They wouldn't be able to afford to do that in the first place, and they are what they are, and they are happy in their skin. Yeah. And that's the whole point of it. And it's just a difficult face. You're not going to hang any of these on your living room wall, I can imagine, though.
No, there is a juxtaposition photo when you said nobody's injected themselves with collagen or whatever that thing is you put into your lips. There's one picture that I found here on the internet that is very much that person that. Perhaps wasn't comfortable in their face before, that's decided to do all those things. But these are, you're right, these are very honest pictures, aren't they? Very honest. I wonder how he approaches these people. I wonder what he says to them. That would be interesting.
Yeah, the thing at the photography show was was an hour and a half with Bruce Gilden, and it was Q&A based. He did explain, that he kind of spent time with these people and explained everything to them. It's, his typical street, he's typically known for his in your face, brash street photography. Yeah. And this is very different to that. This is portraiture, not classical portraiture, but it's portraiture nonetheless.
There was something following the show written by Shauna Hagan, who writes for The Guardian, who said, "A latter-day freak show. Bruce Gilden's extreme portraits are relentlessly cruel." He wasn't the one that asked the question, was he?
I don't think so. It's what you look like. I think it is what it is. People are going to have different opinions of it.
Fascinating book, if you can afford to buy it.
Yeah. Mine's for sale, 250 quid.
I need more slides.
I need more slides.
I need to get more money for more slides. Actually, this question is very good, actually, and it follows the book almost like it was planned. This is from Andreas Noah, who's in Neustein in Germany. Hi, guys. Always thank you very much for the podcast, which helps improve my English. See? We're like homeschooling. Question, likely more for Kevin, this one. The photo book collector. While using the semi-lockdown here for cleaning up and reorganising shelves, I realised that especially my larger photo books, the Salgado ones, don't look as nice as they used to. I have the feeling this is partly by not getting dust off them from time to time. My fault, I know, but also partly because of the way I'm storing them. I have them... Here we go, stand by, Kev. Are you about to do one of those mechanic sort of intakes of breath? You notice how mechanics only ever intake breath. They never blow out. I have them standing on my cupboard shelves upright. The heavy ones, as the Salgado ones, seem to suffer from their weight pressing down, especially the paper covers seem to suffer. I thought about storing the heavy ones in a lying position, but I'm not sure whether that's advisable. Kev, what do you think?
No, I don't think lying is ever advisable. I think vertical is always the way forward. But some of the huge books will, depending on how they've been built and bound, can sag. If you really, really want to keep your books looking top notch, then you need to get book sheaths. Which are basically little little covers.
Like the plastic ones that you find in the libraries.
Yeah. I think, you often see people keeping their vinyl records in.
Yeah, I keep my vinyl records in sheaths, the ones that are worth more money.
Yeah, exactly. I've got a couple of mine in that as well. But of course, that makes your bookshelf collection look like something from Walmart. So you've got to decide on what you want to do with that. But yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, our books are there to be looked at and to enjoy, aren't they? I think in some cases, for books that are literally worth a very lot of money, then I will sheath them up.
Yeah.
But mostly I'll just leave them as they are. But yeah, I think it's best. I don't have any kind of real I can't point you at any reasons for this, but my mind is vertical is best, and that's mostly based on the fact that all libraries, the Martin Parr Library, for example, there's thousands and thousands of books. They're all stored vertically, and some of those are worth a lot of money. There must be a reason why they're not stacking them side by side on top of each other.
There was something about how tight they should be. Where did I read that recently? Oh, I've forgotten now. But
the tightness is more to do with what you don't want really is direct light falling on them, because that can fade the covers and the spines and what have you. Yeah. The tightness is more to do with when you go to pull one out or put one in. If they're too tight together, then invariably you're going to struggle to get them in and out.
Yeah.
So try not to squeeze that extra one in, because it will make the shelf look perfect, but actually everything is pushed together, and then the spines can crack that way also, because there's too much inward pressure.
All this squeezing and pushing in and pulling out. If you've just joined the podcast today, thank God it's not like radio. You'd have tuned in thinking, what on earth are they going on about? I'm not listening to this. This is filth.
Don't forget your sheath.
Absolutely. It's not like this on the other podcast I listen to. Right. Do we have time for one more? Should we squeeze another in?
I can do another one. Keith Martin.
Yes, Keith Martin,
he says,
rescue us.
I shot a party for a friend as a favour, no money, etc. However, they did provide the drinks.
Oh, okay.
It's very nice of them. If I look back at my photos, I can see the moment I accept a drink, in my head, I relaxed and the quality dropped away.
I thought it was about to say, and the pictures got more, just more expressive.
So my question is, when the trays of fizz start to circulate, do you take one?
Every single one, yeah. Thank God for autofocus.
God, no, I have never, ever.
No, not at
a wedding.
No,
never.
No,
Unless it's been a weddings of friends where I'm kind of part guest, part skivvy. I've never, ever had an alcoholic drink at a wedding. Never. No. And I wouldn't.
Have you never accepted a beer or a wine in the evening from
no.
Really? Okay. I have. I mean, but only sort of when you kind of find that yourself off duty. But then the problem is you're driving home, so you can never really have. You should.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's what I was going to say. I'm always driving, so that's the reason for that. But I mean, if I'd finished, let's put this in context. When we were in Switzerland, the last wedding we ever shot 100 years ago, we didn't finish till midnight.
I think we went outside with a couple of wines at the end, didn't we?
Yeah, but we finished and we were staying in that hotel.
Yeah,
that's different. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I'm often asked, do you want a glass of champagne in the afternoon or whatever?
I'd never do that. Never do that.
No, I wouldn't do that. I do know some photographers who do it and they get on the dance floor with a beer in hand and they think it, makes them
mates,
like a hipster. Yeah,
mates.
I think.
Yeah,
maybe I don't know. Anyway, each their own. Everybody does it whatever they want to do. But yeah, I'm always driving, so I wouldn't touch a drop of alcohol that way.
Well, actually, there was somebody at a venue that I'm a recommended supplier for, who was taken off the list because he did exactly what you've just said, Kev. He would always, the staff had reported him for always making sure that he grabbed a glass of champagne as they came round. And eventually somebody said, hang on, that bloke's always got a champagne in his hand.
Yeah.
And I think
not good.
His excuse was, it just makes me look like I fit in with a crowd. I thought, there's a documentary excuse if ever I heard one. I fit in with a crowd.
You just get a glass of fizzy water, don't you? Same thing.
Or orange or water, or something, But right, well, that's it for another week. We're sort of back to normal now. Kev, how does it feel?
Rubbish.
Why does it feel rubbish?
Well, we never did the patrons.
Oh, we didn't do the patron thing. Oh, we'll have to do. Should we make that the first thing we do next week?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Extra special next week. Right, if you've liked this or any of the week's shows, thank you. And if you can, of course, and you feel it's relevant, we'd love you to leave a review. If you can share the episode on Twitter or on Facebook, you are a star. Let us know where you're sharing, because we can give those platforms a shout out too. See you in the Facebook group for any questions you have about today's show. And that, of course, Kev, is where you can leave. Well, there's two sets of questions now, aren't there? There's questions for Andreas and there's questions for the show, aren't there?
There is. There's two pin posts, which is not easy to say. Two pin posts. One is for the questions for the show. It's very obvious. Questions for the show. Questions for Andreas. The Andreas one will be towards the end of the month. And that's it.
Good. And if you'd like to send your questions in the old-fashioned way by owl, since we've been watching a lot of Harry Potter during lockdown, or indeed by email, click at FujiCast.co.uk. Music from Blue Wednesday, supporting music from the incredible artlist.io, and we will see you next week. Bye, Kev. Bye.
Bye-bye.
The FujiCast is an independent Loading Zone production. Email the show with your questions and words of wisdom to click@fujicast.co.uk. Email any complaints and political nonsense to our wives, who will deal with your comments in their own good time and in their own good way.